had a Judge Dredd, Judge Anderson, and Dark Judge's prose story in issue 373 of the Judge Dredd magazine. That story was called Tower of Skin. I've been in a bunch of other places as well, but those are the biggest ones I think people may have heard of. So the first thing I want to talk about here, I'm going to take you through first of a recurring thing here. I'm going to give you the analysis of one of the stories I've written. The first one I'm going to use as an example is from Femforce issue 185, which you can find at accomics.com. And this was a story for the character Tara, the jungle adventurer. Tara Fremont. There's a movie coming about her, by the way, so that's fun. So this story is called The Greater Filth, and it's the first story in issue 185. It's the opening story there. It's got a heck of a splash page. So the first page in a comic book story, this was suggested to me by the founder of AC Comics, Bill Black, that we should always start with a splash page, which is one large image which sets the scene, has room for captions, titles, credits, that sort of thing. So with this one, it opens with Tara in a disused prison building, being held aloft by an enormous, not a magic sword, before you thought I was going to go all He-Man there, being held aloft by an enormous blob of matter full of tentacles and mouths and eyes and all manner of horror. So yeah, I wanted to start the story there with something quite shocking, and get people right in there. I didn't want any build-up. It's only an 8-page story, this, so I didn't want any build-up. I wanted to get straight in there to the action. So Tara is being held aloft by the creature that we refer to as the Filth, which explains that it came to life by a load of pollution and toxins and waste and bacteria, stray genetic material and so on, just becoming sentient as an enormous blob of matter. Now, a lot of Tara stories have an environmental sort of bent to them, which is cool, which is a nice little hook for the character, and I could get a little environmental message across here in the story. But as it goes on, she has to battle the Filth and the various horrible, gelatinous, mutated, clawed, demented beasts that come out of it. So there's some superhero action in there. There's a message. There's an environmental message there, but it has, in the 8 pages that it lasts for, it has a classic 3-act structure. The 3-act structure is integral to any story. Some people refer to a 4-act structure, but I always stick to the 3. So the establishing, so set up the scene, establish the character and what's going to happen. The central act, the second part, which is where the conflict or the problem is that needs to be resolved, and the third act that has to give you a satisfying resolution and bring everything round to a satisfactory conclusion. I think I did that pretty well with this story. So of course Tara gets out of it, and there's a fine message at the end of it. But sticking to the 3-act structure in short stories such as that one, it's not easy. You have to cram a lot in there. But writing these stories for AC Comics has taught me a great deal of discipline in terms of, not trying to cram too much into each page. So it was suggested that 5 panels or so is ideal for a comic book page. So I tend to err towards 4 or 5, just to give the panels enough room to breathe, so that then with the artwork, captions and dialogue, they don't look too overcrowded, that sort of thing. It just it works better for the artist, it works better for the editors and everything. But yeah, in The Greater Filth, Tara faces this monster, overcomes the monster, has a message, and has grown as a character. So stick to those things. You need conflict and resolution, and you're going to have a good story. So the next thing I want to talk about here is a book of mine entitled VHS Ate My Brain. Now that book changed everything for me. So this is how VHS Ate My Brain changed my life. I put the book out myself back in 2014. I was really into the VHS collecting scene, with Facebook groups such as the seminal Horror VHS Collectors Unite page, which is crazy. I joined that page when it had about 300 members, and it's got something like 15,000 now or something mad like that. But it was amazing to be able to find and be in touch with all these people from around the world that shared a love of crazy old films. Really bizarre old horror movies, mainly horror movies, but there's a lot of action in there and sci-fi and so on as well. And yeah, we would get together, we would trade, we would sell and buy, and just basically appreciate this bizarre, obsolete art form of the VHS tape. I wrote a bunch of blog posts and articles about it, but I realised that there was no real content out there, no publications that could really talk about the collecting scene, the VHS scene, as it was. It was burgeoning mainly between 2011 to 2015 or so. It seems to have leveled out a bit at the moment, but there was an explosion of it back then. So I sat down and over a period of a few months wrote this book, VHS Ate My Brain, just about my own experiences hanging out in video shops as a teenager throughout the 90s, and then as an adult tracking down a load of the tapes that I rented as a teenager and basically rescuing them. It felt like they needed saving, otherwise they were going to go to landfill or going to get thrown away. And there was someone, I don't remember who said it, in the VHS documentary Adjust Your Tracking, which you can see my name in the credits of, by the way. Somebody said in that, it was like, yes, you come to me. When DVD came along and all the tapes were being discarded and shoved to the side and sold off, it was like, yeah, you come to me, I'll rescue you, come be safe with me. That's what it was like. I wanted to capture, basically what I wanted was a video shop in my own house. My wife wasn't that impressed with the number of graphic horror movies all over the place, but it's what I did, it's what I collected. I would go around charity shops in various cities. I would find stuff in the back of old newsagents and just all over the place. There was treasure to be found, and in the most unlikely of places. One of my biggest hauls was in a newsagent that used to be a video shop like 20 years ago or so, and they were selling all their old VHS stock off in a big cage at the back of their newsagent, like 50p a tape. I bought 30 tapes that day. And I was filthy by the end of it. One aspect of VHS collecting and hunting is that you're going to get dirty looking in a lot of quite grimy old places. But it was amazing. It was like I'd found buried treasure. But I think that's part of the whole collector thing for anyone, really. So yeah, I wrote this book, VHS Ate My Brain, put it out with all its typos and imperfections intact, thinking that no one would really pick it up. I wrote it mainly for me, so I could have a little chronicle of what I really loved so much. But then it started selling. Of course, the first review it got was 1 star, so cheers for that, 1-star reviewer. But after that, all the 4-star reviews and 5-star reviews and so on came in, and I really appreciated those. But I started getting messages from all over the world. From America, from Canada, from Europe, from Asia, all over the place, telling me that the book had resonated on a personal level with a lot of people, and that was the intention. I wanted it to be quite personal, rather than just talking about tons of weird films. And I mean, you can find any movie magazine or movie book that does that. I did talk about a lot of films, but there was a lot of appreciation of the form of VHS, the artwork, the cases, the scene in video shops, what it was like being stood there in a video store, staring at these rows and rows of tapes for hours on end sometimes, and never quite deciding what you wanted to get. My own main experience with that was a place called Metro Video in Hillsborough, back in Sheffield, my hometown, where the upstairs room of that place had been converted to the room where old films go to die. So everything in there was 2 films for £1 for 2 days, and that was brilliant. I could go in there, get a stack of movies, get some snacks, and just lock myself away in my room as a teenager and pretend that the rest of the world didn't exist. And it was great. It just helped to shape me as a person. It meant I got to see a load of old movies that I would never have risked paying full price to see, because you could never be sure then. there weren't things like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and such that were freely available back then. You had to kind of go on your gut or word of mouth or what magazines had said. It wasn't as easy, but it was fun. It was fun. I found some crazy things there. Lots of horror movies, lots of low budget action movies, and lots of low budget sci-fi movies. Post-apocalyptic sci-fi movies were a staple of my 90s video store adventures, and I'll always have a fondness for films like Nemesis, the Nemesis series, or Cyborg, or any other ones that came along that used a suitably cheap post-apocalyptic setting. They were always fun. I loved those. But yeah, it got me a lot of attention from all over the world. It wound up being continued in a national magazine called Scream, the horror magazine. I wrote that column for the first year. Then, due to some unpleasant personal circumstance changes, I had to stop doing that and to give that up. The magazine carried the column on without me, with a new writer, as it had proved popular. So fair enough. That was a strange feeling because it was mine and mine alone for so long that passing the torch on somebody else was a little strange, and it still feels a little strange seeing it on the cover of that magazine. But it's popular and people like it, so I'm glad they enjoy it still. I wound up on a radio show talking about VHS. That was the straight to video radio show, and playing movie soundtrack stuff, and all kinds of things have happened because of VHS at my brain. And now, 5 years later, 5 years on from releasing it, I'm still being contacted about it, and people still want to ask me about it and talk to me about it, and that's fabulous. But the point of all this that I wanted to bring up is that in writing VHS Ain't My Brain, I wanted it to be personal. I wanted it to talk to the reader and not talk at them. That's really important to me, to humanise things. And in all my work, I've always tried to have a quite a human element to it. And I want things to resonate, and that is the ultimate goal of a lot of writers, is just to have something that resonates. I didn't expect it to sell loads. It's sold a respectable amount, just through the Kindle store and its paperback version through CreateSpace and originally Lulu. I'm very proud of what I've achieved with that, and I hope I can do something that is just as effective again in the near future. So what's next? What's next for me? My next book will be called... I've forgotten. Oh, what is it? Yes, it's The Damned Land and Other Apparitions. It's my first anthology title in 10 years. So my first book, Across the Seas of Mind, was an anthology of short stories I'd written. And this one, which is my 10th book, returns to that format. So this one has 22 stories, which have been gathered from things I've written ever since 2011 or so, up to the present day. The two most recent things in there are it's bookended by brand new stories. It opens with The Damned Land itself, which is a sci-fi story set in a ruined England, with some nice post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk and retro goodness in there, along with some like Warhammer influence and all that kind of thing. Beyond that, there's a lot of other things going on with comics and so on, but yeah, that's the next thing that's coming out from me will be The Damned Land. That's out in August 2019. I'm not sure of the date just yet because of the vagaries of self-publishing, but I will let you know. So what else am I going to be able to talk about on the Planet Hex podcast? You'll be able to hear material on movies, retro video games, tabletop games, board games, role-playing games such as Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer Age of Sigmar, card games such as Magic the Gathering and its digital version, Magic the Gathering Arena. You can find me on Arena as Mister Hex, so Mr. Space Hex #45672. That's my username on there. Nice, memorable username for you. You can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Andrew Haunt. That's HAWNT. You can find me on YouTube as Mister Hex, youtube.com/Mister Hex. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as @Andrew Haunt. And you can find me on Facebook at Andrew Haunt Author. So yes, this is Planet Hex. I want to thank you for listening into this first episode. I will be back soon talking about more writing life stuff and some more geeky subjects. Mainly on the podcast, I'll be talking about the writing life and trying to make your way in it. It's worked for a lot of people, and I want to. I don't get to talk about it too much. I am married to a writer. My wife Claire is a writer, a playwright and humorist and all sorts. She's doing well. She's extremely talented, far more talented than I am. But it's nice to talk about things like that with her. But I can't always talk about comic books with her because she doesn't really have the experience or the knowledge of that. So I'm going to talk to you about it instead over the coming weeks and months. So yeah, stick around for Planet Hex. Please subscribe, and I hope you like it. I'll speak to you again soon. Check me out online. Thanks for visiting Planet Hex. Hello, welcome to Planet Hex. I'm Andrew Haunt, otherwise known as Mister Hex. If you're wondering where the name came from, it was my DJ name when I was playing music at night, such as Batfink, Everfink, the Control Frequency, and Stormblast back in Sheffield back in the day. But the nickname stuck, so I am Mister Hex. I'm a comic book writer and copywriter and author from Nottingham in England, and I'm here to talk about the writing life and just share my experiences with people that want to get into it. So I will get into that a little later. Currently, I am finishing up the edit on my new book, my 10th book, The Damned Land and Other Apparitions, 22 new stories in there. A new film project, which was we had a script meeting about a couple of nights ago with a wonderfully creative person there. Some new Femforce stuff coming, a new issue is coming out, and I have some new plots going to AC shortly, so there'll be some more Femforce action from me soon, and an unannounced, as of yet, comic book project with someone very creative as well, which should be interesting. We'll see how that goes. So, the first of my two topics today would be how I got started. I get asked that a lot. I get asked a lot of the time how I got started with music journalism in power play, how I got started writing comics, and so on. So I'm going to cover that today. So, my first example, my first piece of advice that I would give anyone, 2 words long. And it really is the most simple advice I could possibly give. It's ask nicely. Don't big yourself up. Don't try and tell the publisher that you're going to be the greatest thing ever, that you're the new George R.R. Martin or J.K. Rowling, or don't compare yourself to anyone. Just ask nicely. Say, here I am. This is what I do. This is what I can offer. Would this be of any interest? That's literally how I got started with everything. First example I will use will be Powerplay Rock and Metal magazine, which I wrote for 93 issues between 2007 and 2016. Oh, my memory. So yes, that was a fantastic experience. I got to interview a lot of rock stars and heavy metal bands and people I'd admired for years, as well as new artists, emerging artists. I got to review a lot of albums, books, DVDs, concerts, all kinds of things. It was remarkably fulfilling. So I got into that by asking nicely. That's literally it. I'd been writing a few reviews and so on for an independent music website. It wasn't really what I was after, so I'd interviewed a band called For Selena and Sin, and had offered Powerplay the interview because I didn't think it really fit with the music site I was working for at the time. And the editor, Mark Hoaxey, got back in touch with me and said, we don't have space for this interview. However, we
would you be interested in coming on board as a reviewer? So I said yes straight away, and he got some material out to me to review, and that was that. 9 years later, I'd done like 50 interviews or so, hundreds of album reviews, and had one of the best times of my life. It was fantastic, all coming from asking nicely. Again, the second example I would use would be AC Comics, who publish Femforce and Violet Shadow and so on that I've been writing for. I got in touch with their editorial team. Main editor there would be Mark Hike. I work with a lot of Marks. Marks seem to be cool people. I like Marks. I got in touch with Mark and said I'm an old fan of the comic. In fact, I had a letter in the comic book when I was 15, back in 1993, issue 68, Femforce. I had a letter published in there, and that was my hook. I said I had this letter published many years ago. I'm a writer now. I'd love to do something for Femforce. Would you have any interest in a 4-page Stardust backup story? I just thought, just so I could do something in a comic I used to read, I thought that'd be a great thing to do. So Mark said, "Yeah, okay, let's give this a go. Send me some ideas." So I sent some ideas. First 3 ideas Mark didn't like. He said and that was quite right of him to tell me the faults with those first 3 ideas. It's good to know where something you're putting across isn't working just as much as it's good to know when you're doing something right. In fact, in some cases, it's better to know when you're doing something wrong. So I sent another story in, which was called The Rage of Traxxas, and he said, "Okay, let's go with that one, about a Rurian mercenary teleporting into the NASA laboratories in order to try and kill Stardust, the alien member of the Femforce team." And I wrote a 4-page script. It was quite a memorable night, actually, because I wrote a 2,000-word band interview for Powerplay and an entire comic book story script in one evening. I was very tired by the end of that. But what I'd found from writing the first draft of The Rage of Traxxas was that each page was way too long. And it was a nice reminder that I had no idea what I was doing. I think on a couple of the pages I got like 9 panels, which is way too much. It makes the page too crowded, doesn't leave room for dialogue or anything like that. So Mark got back in touch with me, said he liked the story, they would take it on, but instead of 4 pages, they were extending it. He'd extended the script to 7 pages to make use of each panel that I'd written, just stretching it out over more pages. So straight away, just by asking nicely, I'd had this great experience writing this short story, and also learn a lot very quickly about how much you can fit on a page in a comic book. It had never occurred to me before that, of course, there would be page constraints. It makes sense. It makes sense if you think about it. When you're just writing it, thinking, well, hey, explosions and so on, you can get carried away, and I ended up with far too much on the page. So being advised to cut back on the amount of the number of panels and the amount of dialogue and description and so on, and the amount of movement in a panel, that was really, really helpful. The third example I will use for asking nicely in order to get ahead in writing stuff would be for the official Doctor Who Adventures comic, as published by Panini in conjunction with the BBC. This was during the 12th Doctor's era. It was the editor at the time was a gentleman called Jason Quinn, and I was looking for some more comic book experience, and Doctor Who Adventures runs an original comic book story in each issue, or it did at the time. I don't believe it's currently running. I know there was a special for the 30th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. I'm not sure if it's an ongoing title at present, but at this point, it was an ongoing title. And I sent Jason an email saying English comic book writer. I'd love to be able to submit something for Doctor Who Adventures. Do you have any space for a comic strip story? Jason got back to me really quickly, and much like Powerplay saying we don't have room for what you're offering, Jason told me that there wasn't really any need for comic scripts at the time. They had their full quota of the comic book scripts, but what they needed was some of the prose stories. And in that iteration of the comic, the prose stories centered around the Paternoster gang. So Madame Vastra, Jenny, and the Silurian Strax. Not Silurian, Sontaran. How dare I get the aliens wrong? Sorry about that. Some Doctor Who fan I have. But yes, the Sontaran Strax. And so I came up with a story set in Victorian London, as per all their stories are, called The Case of the Curious Fugitive. It's ran to about 1,500 words, and that was picked up, and I was immeasurably excited by this. I'm a lifelong Doctor Who fan, and being able to join the Doctor Who universe, even in such a small way as that, it was an honour and blissful. And all, again, from asking it nicely. Didn't try and big myself up. I said, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'd like to do. Would there be any interest? Don't have an attitude when you contact people. Don't demand their attention. Just say hello, make your presence known, and offer your services. By all means, say, I can send samples if needed, or here's a sample of something that I've already had published. That's a good thing to do. I often use the Judge Dredd and Dark Judges and Judge Anderson story I wrote, Terror of Skin, for Judge Dredd magazine as an example. I think it's a pretty good example of what I do. So that's kind of my calling card at present. But yeah, the Doctor Who thing was brilliant. It was accepted 5 months before it was published. There was quite a wait there, but just knowing I was joining up with that universe was just spectacular, all from being nice. As an addendum to that, as well as a little additional bit of trivia for that, I actually met Neve McIntosh, the lady that played Madame Vastra in Doctor Who and the Big Finish plays and so on, at MCon here in Nottingham, and I got to say to her, I've got to thank you, Neve, because I got some work because of you. And she's like, really? What's this? So I explained it was the Case of the Curious Fugitive, and there was the comic was out and everything, and she was really sweet about it, really excited about it. I had a little chat about that. I do regret not giving her a copy of the comic. I hadn't taken it with me. But yeah, Neve, thank you ever so much. It was really inspiring to be able to do that, and fabulous to come and say hello to you and tell you about the work I got because of your brilliant portrayal of Vastra. So thank you, Eve. So in conclusion there, yes, ask nicely. That's all I can say. The next thing I'd like to talk about, which I've experienced over the past year, is collaboration. Now, until the last year and a half or so, I'd never really collaborated on any projects. Nothing that was completed. I'd collaborated a few times on bits and bobs here and there, but nothing that was ever finished. And I've learned a lot this past year through collaborating. Now, there's two people I've mainly collaborated with over the past year. One is the LA-based film producer, director, writer, and screen queen, Jessica Cameron. Hello, Jess, of Screen Queen Stream and Mania and Truth or Dare fame, as well as the thoroughly harrowing, brilliantly harrowing Song of Solomon movie and a load of other stuff. If you find her on IMDb, Jessica Cameron, her IMDb page is astonishing. There's a load of work on there. I'd interviewed Jessica for horrornews.net, who I still write for from time to time, and I'd had the urge to try and get back into filmmaking. I'd made some indie movies, worked on some indie movies back in 98, 99 sort of time, and I thought, okay, I'll contact Jess. I sent her it was a tweet actually originally, asking if she had any interest in writing something with a sci-fi feel to it. So there were some messages going back and forth about plot ideas. The sci-fi plots didn't work out. Again, that's nothing against Jessica. They just didn't work out. The ideas that I'd had were not feasible or could have cost too much, that sort of thing. So Jess passed me some ideas that she'd had for things that she wanted to do. There's 2 film projects. I won't give any plot details away or the titles while they're still ongoing. But I said, yeah, okay, I'll have a go at these, and did 2 scripts for Jessica. using the story elements that she wants to include, and my own twisted sense of humour and my own fascination with supernatural things, and yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on in there. But it was the thing that was interesting was figuring out how to meld um, the ideas that these collaborators had given me with things that I felt would make a good story. So it was important to make sure I covered all the ground of all the things that that Jessica wanted in these projects, the sort of characters, the settings, and bearing in mind limitations of location and special effects and so on. But it was absolutely fascinating figuring out not so much a compromise as a middle ground on these projects, being able to figure out how to make them work for the best possible outcome. And I've done it again recently with a comic book creator who I've been writing a project for. It's yet to be announced, but again, that the development of that idea has been wonderfully. It's been fascinating as a learning experience as a creator and a writer and someone that enjoys taking in these stories. Um, as Again, finding middle ground, finding some shared creative spark. Um, and I feel that in collaborating on these projects, they have come out far richer than they would have done if I'd done them off of my own back. Um, and I'm fully capable of writing projects of my own, but these particular ones, they needed a certain spark that could only really be generated by more than one person working on them. And it's been a fantastic learning experience. From that, what I learned was to listen to your collaborator, was to take on board their feedback about the things that you've sent them. If you sent them sites, if you sent them pages of stuff, and see if they wanted to go in a different direction or do something different with a character or a plot point or send it in a different way. Listen to them and try it. Don't immediately say, no, that's not going to work. What you should immediately say is, I'll have a go. I'll try that. Because trying more and more ideas can only result in a better outcome for the story that you're trying to tell. So those collaborations have been an absolute pleasure, and I hope to be able to bring you some more news about those collaborations pretty soon. So thank you very much to Jessica Cameron. You can find her on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, but you do check out her films. They are really superb modern horror movies and thrillers. I think you'll really get a kick out of those. I do recommend those thoroughly, and I'm looking forward to announcing who my comic book collaborator is on a new project and see where that goes soon as well. So that's my writing advice for this episode, the second episode of Planet Hex. I do hope it's been of interest to you. I'm still getting used to the podcast idea, which is it's fascinating being. It's an interesting experience sitting here and talking to myself for great lengths of time with the cat staring at me, trying to figure out if I'm talking to him or whether I've just finally lost it. Either is possible, to be honest. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this. It's been great to be able to share some of my experience that I've gathered over the last decade, and I hope it's proving to be an enjoyable experience for yourselves. So where can you find me? You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and Twitch at Andrew Haunt. Search for that name on there. You can find me on Magic Gathering Arena if you feel like getting beaten and so on. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Andrew Horn Author and all the usual places. If you can't find any of those things, just Google me and you'll find a ton of stuff. But it's nice to hear from everyone. So please do get in touch. Send me a tweet, send me a message on Facebook or a comment there. And I'm more than happy to get in touch with everyone. So yes, ask nicely, listen to your collaborators, and keep on creating. Thank you ever so much for checking out the second episode of Planet Hex. I will see you very soon.